Well, hello and good morning, everybody. For those that missed the intro at the beginning, my name's Sasha Wilson. I'm going to be your host today on the Merchants Track. I'm the Senior Commercial Director at Avalara and very excited to be here for the whole event today. For those who don't know who Avalara are, we're the tax specialists. We're the people to come to whenever anyone has a question about cross-border taxes or selling globally. We help businesses understand where they have tax obligations. We help them get registered for the right taxes, and our software plugs into their e-commerce platforms, their marketplaces, their ERPs or billing systems to make sure that the right taxes or duties are being calculated. That's enough about me. We're here to host an exciting bunch of speakers today on the Merchants Track. I'll be introducing each session and handing it over. Please remember to submit questions via the Totem platform. There's a Q&A section where you can submit your questions. At the end of the session, there'll be a short break where you can visit the supplier showcase or meet with fellow attendees, or even just have a cup of tea before the next session. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker. Håkan Thyr is the Chief Revenue Officer at Fruugo. Håkan and I go back many years. It's great to see you again, Håkan. And Håkan's going to be telling us all why we should all be selling on the Fruugo marketplace. So Håkan, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Yeah, my name is Håkan Thyr. As Sasha indicated, I've been around for a while. I get 2 decades in e-commerce. So I've been at Fruugo for a bit over 2 years, and it's certainly been an interesting couple of years. So what I'm going to cover is I'm going to start by talking a little bit about why you would consider selling globally in the first place, give you an overview of Fruugo and how we can help you do that. We're going to look a little bit about what's in store for 2022. And as Chris said, and Sasha as well, please ask questions as we go. I'll take questions at the end, or Sasha will take them and ask me. If you have more questions than we can handle in the time we have, we'll certainly get in touch with you and answer your questions. And feel free to connect on the platform, and we'll make sure that we answer whatever questions you may have. All right, so let's get started. So if we start with the kind of the global opportunity, why would you even look globally? Obviously, the world is much bigger than your home market, so it's an opportunity to reach a lot more customers than you're currently reaching if you're only selling domestically. You will also find that there may be demand in places that you hadn't thought of, and demand shifts. So there may be local demand that's not in your domestic market. Maybe that you can be more competitive in certain international markets. There may be high demand, higher prices conceivably. And if you are a brand looking to go direct to consumer, it may be that starting that internationally might be beneficial. You may have distribution agreements that prohibit you from doing it domestically, for example. Obviously, opportunities come with challenges, right? Or we'd all be doing it. When you start going into new countries and new territories, you inevitably will deal with things like localization. So how do you translate your content? How do you make sure that you deal with currency exchange? What are the payments methods you need to support? What are VAT regulations, things like that? So you're set up in a new country. How do you market? Like, how do you even get customers to your site or your products? Where do you even start? What are the right countries for you? And how much is this going to cost? And what type of investment do you need to do to go into new markets? And I would say marketplaces in general, not just Fruugo, are a great way of starting internationally. It's a good way of getting access to an existing customer base without a massive investment. I've seen a lot of, at the early days of e-commerce, a lot of companies started out by copying what they did in the UK and try to do the same thing on their own site in France and failed spectacularly, whereas marketplaces reduces the risk of that. So Fruugo was built from the ground up as a cross-border platform. We set out to solve the problems associated with selling across borders. And the way we do that is we have one single marketplace that covers 46 different countries. So what that means is you integrate once and you reach over 40 countries. And I think it's important to realize that over 90% of orders on Fruugo are cross-border. So we are definitely delivering on that promise of being a cross-border marketplace. So we do that by, first of all, we translate your content into up to 28 languages, depending on where you choose to sell. So you provide us with a single feed in your native language, and we take it from there. Each site is a localized site, and we provide the local preferred payment methods to be able to provide a local experience. It's easy if you're a UK or US merchant to think that everyone in the world uses credit cards, but that is not how it works. For example, if you look at Finland, which is, a Western country, their preferred payment method is bank transfers. So you need to be able to support that. Search is something that we're going to come back to repeatedly. We invest heavily in search in each local market. So we have a data science team that will run Google Shopping campaigns for you in each market, driving traffic directly to your listing. So it's not about promoting Fruugo, it's about promoting your products. We also handle for the FX side of it. So foreign exchange, you send us your price lists in your currency, and what's in that price list is what you get paid. So we take the risk of any currency fluctuations, and we also cover fraud. So you're not taking the risk of fraudulent transactions. We get that on for you. All right, so some numbers about Fruugo. First of all, it was the first time we actually announced trading numbers. So in 2021, we were just over 135 million pounds in GMV. That's 180 million and change if you prefer dollars. We have about 20 million unique visitors per month, which is a pretty big number. I think if you're looking at marketplaces, one of the things that's important to look at is, particularly in the case of Fruugo, is look at the totality of the platform. I think a lot of people look at fruugo.co.uk and make assumptions based on that, but that makes up a small fraction of our traffic and our sales. So if you are a merchant, I mean, obviously, last year our Q4 numbers grew by 70% compared to the prior year, and grew by we grew 200%, I think, compared to 2019, which was the last kind of normal year, which is great for us. But as a seller, what you need to look at, I think, is performance per seller. So we achieved that growth today we have about 1,800 live sellers on the platform. And while we grew 70%, we certainly didn't grow the seller number by that same number. So we achieved that growth by increasing sales per seller, which is really what should matter to you. If we had doubled our revenue by tripling our number of sellers, that actually means less per seller, right? So look for that when you consider your marketplaces. So in terms of where you can expect to sell, these are our top 10 countries. Switzerland may be a surprise, but it performs really well. UK is typically up there, and these pie pieces shift around a bit month by month, but typically it will be Northern European countries, US, Australia show up in there, which is kind of indicative of e-commerce as a whole. Same thing for categories. If you look at these, then you've looked at similar stats for e-commerce. Our category performance is very similar to e-commerce as a whole because we're a really broad marketplace. Important to keep in mind that because we drive so much of our traffic through search, categories are less important than they may be on other marketplaces. It's more important to have in-demand products and good product data to make sure that you show up prominently in search. And in terms of our shoppers, again, kind of indicative of e-commerce, but it's a very even gender split, straight down the middle, and we reach a very broad range of shoppers. All right, so apologies to international attendees. We're going to take a quick look at UK specifics. So I think it's fair to say that 2021 was a fairly challenging year in the UK. While UK is one of the few countries where the domestic slice of the pie was actually the biggest last year. But having said that, 6 of the top 10 countries for UK sellers were EU countries. That obviously came with some challenges in 2021. So July 1st, the EU they implemented the marketplace tax as part of the VAT reform. The VAT reform meant that if you are selling into the EU from outside, you're responsible for VAT for consignments under 150 euros, which combined with the marketplace tax actually makes it easier to sell on marketplaces than to sell direct, because as a marketplace, Fruugo is now responsible for the VAT, the reporting and remittance of VAT for consignments under 150 euros. Whereas if you're selling direct from your own platform, you assume that responsibility, right? So if you're selling typically under 150 euro consignments, it's much easier from a VAT perspective to do that through a marketplace. Even with that in place, selling on into the EU came with some challenges. So what we've done, we've done several things to make sure that we help our sellers provide a good customer experience, even while selling from a third country, as it's called. So we've updated our platform. So with each order that we send you, we will provide the IOSS number, so the International One-Stop Shop number, which is what you need to provide to make sure that the package goes through customs. I guess it's important to point out that we do this with other geographies with a similar regulation. So Australia, New Zealand, Norway, all have implemented similar taxes, and we provide the equivalent number for those countries as well. For each order, there's a flag to let you know that we will be paying VAT, so we don't end up double paying. And finally, for orders that are over that 150 euro threshold, what we can do is we can withhold the equivalent of local VAT and remit that back to the seller to make sure that we cover the majority of the cost of shipping those orders DDP. That way, the customer continues to receive a good experience, and they don't have to have their orders stopped by customs, and they don't have to pay extra to receive that order. All right, so let's take a look at the customer journey, customer experience on Fruugo. So I said, virtually all our traffic starts on Google. So it will typically start with someone searching for a fairly specific product. So in this case, someone is looking for a hoverboard. We sell a lot of those. And it shows up in Google Shopping. You click through, you land directly on the product on Fruugo. You can quickly add it to your basket, check out, job done. So a pretty seamless journey from Google straight through to checkout. And we talked a lot about localizing globally. So let's take a look at what that looks like with the same product, in this case on the desktop platform. So this is the same hoverboard on the UK site. So what you'll see here is prices are in pound sterling. You'll see the payment methods you'd expect to see on a UK site. And obviously it's in English. Now, if we look at the same product on the .nl site, the Dutch site, the price is now in euros. You'll see an extended list of payment methods. For example, Ideal is one of these that if you only sell in the UK, you probably never heard of, but it's imperative to have to sell in Netherlands because it's a dominant payment method there. And the content is in Dutch, obviously. So we took care of all of that for you. We converted the currency, we translated the content. And to reiterate the importance of the product, right? Because of how we drive traffic, shoppers search for products, and 90% of the traffic to Fruugo comes from a product-specific search. So what that means is the customers or shoppers land directly on your product. They arrive with purchase intent. They have a fairly specific search that they perform to get to land on your product. And so what that means is it's not really so much about the category as it is about the product. And these 4 random products are all products that at some point over the last 2 years have had a surge in demand. So last couple of summers, we haven't been able to travel. A lot of people took up stand-up paddleboarding for some reason. I guess that's what you do if you can't go abroad. Electric scooters have been very popular. Obviously, at the start of the pandemic, hand sanitizer was flying off the shelves. And it's been stressful, so we've been buying fidget spinners throughout. All right, so what does it take to sell on Fruugo? A lot of our requirements are around data quality and the things that allow us to sell your products. So you need to have GSINs. You can get that from GS1. The exception is if you're the manufacturer of the product, but in general, it's something you should have anyway. It just makes for better selling. You need to have adequate data. So what that means is good descriptive titles, good descriptions, and so on. Image quality is important. Google are particular about that. So images on white background, you're not allowed text or any overlays on the images. Again, if you have text on the image, it will get rejected by Google, and we won't be able to sell it, unfortunately. You need to be able to send us an automated feed. So it's not like on Amazon where you can go in and create your products and update it. So we work with most of the major integration platforms like Linworks or Channel Advisor or any of those to make sure that they can supply an automated feed to us. We are a cross-border platform, so we require that you sell in at least 2 foreign countries. Obviously, the more the better, and it's going to help you drive more sales. You need to be able to deliver international orders in no more than 14 days. So what that means is you pick the countries where you can live up to that delivery promise. You don't have to sell in all countries. We would recommend, if you're a UK seller, that you at least cover off the European countries. Yeah, so products allowed by Google, obviously. That means you can't sell things that they ban, like weapons or anything like that. That's one of their prevented categories. In terms of what makes you competitive and successful, obviously price competitiveness is important. And again, it goes to Google search as well as just the way customers search today. A large catalog helps. Even more important, I think, is to make sure that your products are in demand. You can have a very large catalog of products that no one looks for, and we won't be able to sell any of that. So, and shipping costs is one of those interesting ones where people prefer to pay more for a product with free shipping than they do for a lower priced product with a shipping cost attached to it. So if you can bake shipping costs into the price, that's a great way of offering free shipping, which seems to incentivize customers to actually transact. All right, so those are the requirements, and I would say it's I wouldn't say we're restrictive, but it's we do put up a bit more barriers than some other marketplaces just because of how we generate traffic to your products. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a look at the future. So we'll do that with a quote from Niels Bohr. It's hard to make predictions about the future, but we're going to try anyway, and I'm going to wrap it up and go into question time. All right, so some of my predictions. We may be out of COVID restrictions, but I think we're going to see more of that. I'm certainly not an epidemiologist, but there's likely to be more surges in COVID throughout the year. And I think with that, even if that doesn't lead to lockdowns, it will inevitably lead to staff shortages. It's easy when you work from home in a remote location and everything you do is online. You kind of forget that there are people out there who do real jobs, like actually pack packages and deliver them. And when we have a surge in COVID, a lot of those people will be affected, and it will simply be, if you take thousands of people out of the workforce every week, then that will have impact. We will continue to see the adoption of e-commerce increase. I'm sure you've heard the numbers of the growth throughout the pandemic. Apparently at the start of the pandemic, the share of retail that went through e-commerce grew as much in the first 10 weeks as it had in the previous 10 years. And by all indications, that's not dropping back down. So it's just going to continue. People got hooked on e-commerce, and they're going to keep using it as much as they can. I think there are going to be more continued supply chain challenges. COVID will certainly contribute to that. We're still short of tens of thousands of lorry drivers in the UK. And I think what we see is a lot of retailers are kind of reconsidering their just-in-time strategies and maybe trying to build up more inventory locally rather than relying on deliveries arriving on time. I think we're going to see a fair bit of squeeze. Utility bills are likely to go up in the UK in kind of April, May timeframe. Inflation is on the rise, and I think people are going to be a lot more cost conscious. I think one of the impacts of that is that some segment of the convenience shopper will become a value shopper. So that product that you need to buy, and rather than having it delivered this evening, maybe you wait 5 days. If you save a few quid, that it will shift more towards buying based on value rather than on convenience. And I think that will largely benefit marketplaces. So I think that will also help kind of drive the general trend towards marketplaces. I think we're also going to see more of the direct-to-consumer trend from brands as it gets harder and harder to connect to consumers. And again, consumers are going to shift more towards value. Brands need to have more of a direct connection. And I think marketplaces are going to play an increasing role in that. So kind of the combination of, well, really all of this is that marketplaces are going to continue to outpace direct channels. It's going to be harder and harder to rely on your own website sales to reach the customer audience that is increasingly going to be buying from marketplaces. And I would say if you're watching this, then it's probably because you either are selling on marketplaces already and you're looking to expand, or you're looking to kind of make the move onto marketplaces. And if I'll finish this by inviting you to check out Fruugo and see if we can help you make that expansion global. And if you want to find out more, sell.fruugo.com is a good place to start. And we have plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to let Sasha pass them on to me, so I can't actually see your questions in real time. So Sasha's going to be the intermediary.
Brilliant. Okay, that was great, Håkan. Thank you for that insight there. There's one data point I actually have to ask you about, because there's something that surprised me when you were showing me the pie charts there, and I don't know if you have an answer for it, but I'd love to know why you think Switzerland was the best performing country last year above all those other countries. Is there anything behind that?
So we have an interesting set of countries in the top 10. So I'm Swedish, so I'm happy to see Sweden in there. But in general, I think it's smaller countries that are used to buying cross-border. Obviously, there are a couple of marketplaces in Switzerland, but not really any huge dominant ones. And they have for years kind of developed some familiarity with buying abroad. Same thing, I think, with Sweden. Granted, Amazon is there now, but it hasn't exactly set the world on fire so far. And we also do well in Norway, which is a similar situation. No real dominant local marketplace, and a small country, especially with very high local prices, and they're much more likely to buy abroad, I think.
Brilliant. Okay. No, that's excellent. Thank you. And I do have another question as well. And it was great to see on one of your slides, you're talking about a subject which is close to my heart and close to Avalara's heart, which was about the taxes. And obviously, last year was a very difficult year for everybody selling into Europe, into the UK, vice versa. So with the introduction of the VAT reform and Brexit beginning of the year, and then there was the reforms, the EU reforms in the middle of the year in July. I'm just keen to understand what impact you saw on sellers on the Fruugo platform.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting year with a lot of change. So I think on January 1st, the big change was really for EU sellers selling into the UK, because we implemented the same tax reform in the UK on January 1st that the EU did on July 1st. So what that meant was that EU sellers need to have VAT registration and put the ORI number on their labels. And I think in both scenarios, both sellers and to some extent couriers and just anyone involved in the list exchange, but we're not amply prepared for that. I mean, obviously, because cross-border is kind of the core of our business, we spend a lot of time trying to inform sellers as much as possible. And what we found was where it was the weakest chain that tripped people up. And in a lot of cases, it was something trivial that prevented them from getting the either EORI number into the UK or IOSS number into the EU, getting that number onto the consignment. So it could be the label printer couldn't handle it. That level of detail that kind of broke the chain. And we saw in January, we saw a fair number of EU sellers drop off the UK site for a few weeks just to kind of get their head around what was going on. And to a similarly in July. A lot less than I anticipated, but there was a dip maybe through July and into August. The number of UK sellers were back up to kind of pre-July by mid-August. So I think sellers kind of figured it out. But yeah, there were definitely some changes that needed to go into place. The different couriers had different solutions. Obviously, if you sell on multiple marketplaces in Europe, you need to be able to put different IOSS numbers on different consignments depending on where it was sold. Initially, the Royal Mail suggested that you should open separate Royal Mail accounts for each marketplace because they couldn't handle the splitting out the IOSS numbers within a single account, which obviously costs headaches for a lot of sellers who are using their services. But I think overall it was smoother than we had feared. And I think at this point, most sellers have gotten their head around it. I think if you haven't gone on top of that, you're going to be dealing with a lot of customer returns and refused orders that get stopped in customs because it's not labeled correctly or pre-declared correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of consistent, feedback that we've been hearing from retailers directly, other platforms and marketplaces as well. But it like you, it does seem that I think there was that kind of dip in the middle of the year, but I think things are starting to soften off, and people are getting used to the new regime. So let's just have a little look about talk about the your performance. You said yourself, it's been due to COVID and all these other changes. There's been a faster move towards e-commerce than anyone had anticipated. So it's been a fairly exceptional couple of years for anyone in the e-commerce business. Have you at Fruugo seen any particular trends in terms of specific products performing better over others, or demand in certain regions?
It is, it's kind of come and gone in waves, if you will. And I think obviously at the start of lockdown, people were buying hand sanitizers and things like that. I think the interesting one has been seeing the local spikes in demand that you really couldn't predict, and particularly COVID-related things. For example, we had in last summer, there was a program, or there was a report on Swiss News, on the morning news, where they quoted some very early preliminary study regarding a echinacea supplement that had early in vitro indication that it could kill the coronavirus. By by 11 o'clock, we had doubled our daily sales in Switzerland, and it was virtually all related to this supplement. So people immediately went on Google and they found the supplement on Fruugo. I think the interesting part of that was the sellers who benefited were based in US, Spain, UK, and Sweden. And so they weren't Swiss sellers who benefit from this. It was, and if you were, in Sweden or the UK, you wouldn't have been watching Swiss news, and you would have had no idea that this would happen if you hadn't been on Fruugo. So that's been interesting to watch. In terms of, saw another question pop up more generally about what products do well. And I would say it's whatever's in demand. We see spikes based on kind of whatever's happening culturally. This autumn, we couldn't find enough Squid Game costumes to sell. It was super hot, obviously, leading up to Halloween. So any kind of cultural thing like that, since it's so demand driven, we will pick up on anything like that. We saw, like, when the Spider-Man movie came out, we saw a spike on Spider-Man related merchandise. Broadly speaking, like you saw on one of those pie charts, apparel, clothing, shoes, accessories are our dominant category. But whatever's in demand today is what we're selling.
Brilliant. Håkan, thank you so much. Congratulations on being the first speaker of the day as well. And we will be having a break now.